So Tom Greerty is about to take over the podium, and he has a wonderful talk and slideshow ready for us. And so we can now enjoy that. You can take it away, Tom.
Thank you very much. Thank you very, very much. Before I begin, I want to thank Mary Goodman, who encouraged me to do this today. Mary's here, I know she is, and the Zamaras for helping with photos and giving me confidence that we could find all these things. John and the whole, and Vivian Rittenhouse, who's your new director, I understand, has really helped a lot. And right here, you helped me so much with the encouragement. And even I saw her in the store the other day. I went to the dollar store to buy those cheap glasses so I could find out what I was going to tell you, right? And she's in the store with me. I got busted. Years ago, I wrote a book called Hometown Poems about Martinez, and it's a lot of stuff in here. And I'm going to take a couple of little excerpts and read from it at crucial times. So we're going to do a couple of things. I'm going to give you an overview of the bars in Martinez, what they were like, talking 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, and 80s, and where they were at. And my wife passed out a little map for you here. And what we have on the map is Ferry Street, which is blotted out. It didn't carry that well. Main Street, Alhambra Avenue, and then, of course, on Pacheco Boulevard, there are some out there, such as Mitch's Club and Trails Inn, and such as, Della Pipa's was out there, and, of course, Shorty's. Shorty's was there for years. Slam dang. Okay. All right, so we're going to look at the map a little bit and talk about it, and just tell you that I have personal experience in almost all of these places. Yeah, I grew up in Martinez, and we were rough and tumble when I was there, and I went into the bars. I wanted to figure what they're all out, because when we were 18, 19, 17 at Alhambra High School, we couldn't go in the bars, supposedly, right? And so I was always interested in those, what they were there. I'm going to go over them a little bit. After I talk about the bars, we're going to see a slideshow of some of the bars in Martinez and some of the things. We have some good photos from the College Lane, which was a classic, total classic. And then we have Amato's, which was another classic. And we have a few pictures like of Mitch Costanza himself and Mitch's Club. And we have also a softball team that he supported, because that's what some of these bars and restaurants would do. They put teams in the softball and they wear their name on it and to promote the business. And so all of this begins down at the wharf with the best and coldest beer in town, which was at the Martinez Marina, or not Marina, but the Fisherman's Wharf down at the end, and it was called Chet Pasco's place. And the people from those days would remember Chet Pasco. He was a character, and it was right down at the end of the water, and you could walk down into Chet Pasco's place, which was on the water. And as you walked on the steps, and I was a kid, 12 years old or something, you could see the water underneath it. I mean, there was no OSHA, there was no workers' comp coverage or carrying about. And then you went into Pasco's place, and he had a sign, coldest beer in town. And he had really good pinballs in there. And he'd let the kids play pinballs. He'd sell sandwiches and hot dogs and everything. And it was right at the end of town on the other side of the tracks. And so that was where Patco's was at. And then we're going to have a photograph from Granger's Wharf, because Martinez had two wharfs. So we're down on the water. The strait is about a mile wide from Martinez to Benicia. There's 13 rivers that come off the Sierras from the north and the south. They come down, they form the San Joaquin, they form the Sacramento. They catch a glimpse of one another in Antioch. In Pittsburgh, they kiss, and in Martinez, they get married. That's a true story. And then we have two ways of getting into Martinez. You can take the Pacheco route, which is like a river of cars, or you can take Alhambra Valley route, which is from the valley, and the other's from the flatland. Martinez started in 1850, really 1849, and the reason it was a popular place and a destination was the ferry. There was a ferry that went from Martinez to Benicia, or really Benicia to Martinez and back. And it was started by a gentleman in Benicia, who was kind of the founder of Benicia with Vallejo. And they started around 1849, 1848. As soon as the gold rush hit, President Polk, who was the president in those days before Abraham Lincoln, he walked into the House of Commerce. Both the Senate and the House were there, grabs the microphone as the president, and he says, gold has been discovered in California. And the place went wild, and people came from all over, because the president of the United States made that presentation and that announcement. It was a big deal. And so the gold rush really helped start and develop Martinez in so many ways. Another fact happened, and I told this story today. We're going to talk about a church that started around that time too, 1850, and became a parish in 1873. I'm probably not going to talk much about it today, but I would like the opportunity to come back and talk about St. Catherine's Church. That's 150 years old, very historic, beautiful place, and has contributed so much for so long to our community. But I'll have to probably come back for that, because tonight is so preoccupied with the bars, and it's interesting. All of you. And the other thing we have to remember, these bars were also restaurants. Amato's was a bar, but it was a restaurant. Was it a bar? It was both. It was Amato's. Paul's Place was a fabulous restaurant, but it was a bar. He had a lounge bar. And at the end of the bar, when you stood there, it was Paul. And I asked one time his wife, Josephine, I says, was Paul a good cook? He was a good cook, but that's not what he was. He was the world's greatest maitre d'. And I went, wow. And I remember my father and mother would go in there, and I'd go in there, and my wife and I went many times, and you'd walk in the lounge from the parking lot, because it was an old mansion that was from the McNamara family in 1880 or something. And Paul got it in 1928, and Paul was a great carpenter. A lot of these Italians that came from Catalica, that's another little part of the story. A lot of the bars and restaurants were either a Sicilian or people from Catalica on the Adriatic. People from Catalica on the Adriatic. And Adriatic food is different than the garlic and the olive oil and the salt and the pepper from the Sicilian side. There's more butter up north, and there's more tomato sauce. But anyway, that is an interesting thing. But the clubs, a lot of these places were called clubs. Mitch's Club, the Hub Club, and then there was Paul's Place, Nick's Place, Amato's Place, and so this was the scene of a lot of these places. Now, if you have your map, I want to go over that with you just briefly before we start the pictures. So you could see, it's not well written, but Chet Pasto's place. And that's across the tracks and down in the water, which I've described for you. And if you went to Pasco's place, you could get a fishing license. If you went to Pasco's place, you could rent a boat. You could rent an engine. You could get gasoline. You could find out about the tides. You could find out about what's biting and what isn't biting. You could meet other fishermen. You could have a beer and talk to people. It was a great place, and we need that kind of a place back in Martinez. And we don't have it. And I've been aching and paying for that for so long that we get a place where you can find out what's going on with the river. And Chet knew everything. He knew what ships were coming. He used to warn the fishermen. He'd say, now they got 2 big freighters coming in Shell. They're going to be in at such and such time. Better be careful with that, you guys. Chet knew everything. We'd go down there. He'd talk to my dad, and the bar was there. And then he had these big picture windows. You could see all the way out east. You could see out towards the channel and the Delta, and you could see west out towards San Francisco area and all that. So it was quite a place. And then you had across the tracks Amato's. And we're going to talk about Amato's, and the photographs are going to be very interesting. Amato's was a headquarters. There's just no doubt about it. It was a headquarters for fishing, for hunting, for food, for gathering. It really was a headquarters. So if you want, it was the headquarters of the Delta. And even their sign, we have a picture of their sign to share with you. It talks about being the headquarters of the Delta. If you want to go fishing, you want to go hunting and find out what's going on there, the Amato's will tell you and serve you some good food, very good food, actually. We used to go there all the time, my wife and I. My wife and I would go in there and we'd say to the waitress, I'd say, did I have any sturgeon? Oh, no. It's not on the map, And I go, are you sure? And then she'd go back in, and Frank or somebody was a cook, and she'd say, yes, there's just 2 pieces left. Right? And some of the fishermen would deliver the fish there as well. And just a great, great place. So we're going to start here in just a minute, but I want to go over the bars a little more. And then as you pass next door to Amato's was a place called Dominic's, which was Dominic Ballesteri's fish place, all fish, Sicilian. And then on the corner was Angelo's. That was Angelo Signorini. And Angelo Signorini opened that And at St. Catherine's, there's a window. One of the stained glass windows is dedicated to Angelo, of Angelo's place of all things. What a wonderful thing, by his wife. And then Hanky Pestachini bought that and ran it for a few years. A lot of people, Martinez, knew Hanky. He worked for Diablo Valley College, running all the equipment out there for years and years, and did a great job. Across the street from him, and Sunflower Garden is where Angelo's is at now, okay, for your information. And across the street was a place called the Corn Crib. And then I didn't have any experience with that. And then down Escobar, at the far end of Escobar, right where Barreless and Alhambra are, was Nick's place. And part of that group of Italians that came from Catolica, he was a really good carpenter. And he basically built the building along with Roy Jeans' grandfather. You know, remember Roy Jeans, Armando? Oh, yeah. His grandfather was Armando, and they built that building. And Nick was in there. And Nick was a really good cook. You know, he really was. He had a good restaurant. And he lived up on the hill and built a wonderful house up there with a wonderful basement. And you can have a great time. You can have private parties there. People come over and say, this is a fabulous house. Who made this house? And Tim Farley lives there. What do you tell him, Tim?
Hey, it's a wonderful place. It's a hidden gem. It's the grotto. And once you come, you're always welcome back.
Yeah, that's right. Paul Paganini, Nick Paganini were friends and related to Alfred in the city. Anybody ever go to Alfred's in the city? And yeah, Alfred's in the city. And Bimbo, remember Bimbo? They were all from the same town near Catolica and Remedy, and they were good friends. That's why Nick Paganini every 3 years would get a new Cadillac, because Alfred would get sick of his and he'd give it to Nick or sell it to Nick. Yeah, no, anyway, so good stories. I lived across the street from Nick, so that's what I'm telling. Another little thing to let you know is my father, when I was born, my father ran the Chamber of Commerce. When I graduated from Alhambra in 1964, he ran the Chamber of Commerce. So I went in all these places with him. I remember the first time I walked in the Aloha Club. Santa Maria, Madre de Dios. No, it was a great place, but it was very different because it was tropical. It was Hawaii. It was, all those islands, because here's what had happened. And this affected the College Lane too and other places. Here's what happened. After World War II, a lot of these guys and gals had tremendous experiences overseas. They became knowledgeable how things work. And they also participated in the tropical life. They loved Hawaii. They loved those drinks. And you'll see when you see the publicity of the Aloha Club, how Mr. Green was a good businessman trying to get business. We're going to go there in just a minute with the photos and what have you. And then across the street was the Rex Club. And now I'm showing you on Escobar Street on the map. It's the Rex Club there. That was owned by Dan Cedar, who served on the city council. It was a card room, but a bar, but it was a card room, no food. So a lot of these places, or some of them, they had a card room and a bar, but basically, his was, in my opinion, I visited it, and that was enough. And then next to that, of course, was the Aloha Club, and we're going to talk about that. And then the Matador, or the old place, which was a card room. The old place had beer and wine, but it was a card room. So we had about 4 or 5 card rooms in Martinez. And we also had guys who were runners. Carmen was a runner. I remember Carmen, I'm trying to remember his last name now, but Frankie's father, he was a runner. So he'd get the bets all together and drive them down to the racetrack. Get there on time, place the bets in there, drive like hell, come back with the winners and the losers and pay the people and stuff like that. Yeah, so we had runners. So Martinez was pretty good at gambling, And so we had the gambling games going and the betting and all of the stuff like that. And that was good. And then, of course, we have the Matador, and I'm going to talk. My brother-in-law owned the Matador. His name was Butch Delavat. He was married to my sister Joan, and I have a photograph of him. I'll share it with you in a minute. And then the College Lane next to that, in our map. And the College Lane was probably the greatest bar, just real bar, ever. In my opinion, I would put it up to the North Star. I went to the North Star in San Francisco in North Beach. It was an amazing place. And then I went to Husson's. Anybody ever been to Husson's in Mexico? It was an unbelievable place. But the College Lane was just really Martinez and a thriving place, and the people were serious drinkers. They weren't fooling around. These guys got there at 6. These guys got there at 6 a.m., on their way to work. Then they would come back at 10:30. And then they come back in the afternoon, and there were judges there. There were lawyers. There were doctors. A concluding story I'm going to try and give you has a hero in it, and it's really from the College Lane. It's a true story. I was there, I saw it, and we'll narrate that for you at the end because it has also a blessing. Because this is booze and blessings and what have you. Okay, so then on the other side of the College Lane was the barber shop and then Hoffman's liquor store, great place. Around the corner from there was a place called the Green Room, not far from where Betty's Girls was for a while, which was a good bar and restaurant in Martinez. But the Green Room, oh boy, no windows. I went in there, I went, holy Toledo, right? Everyone was 70 or 65, and they were just getting their schnapps, right, like this. And anyway, enjoying themselves. And then on the other side of Main Street was George and Andy's. George and Andy's, which became Oscar's later. Oscar was a good story because Frankie at the College Lane, I think he sold a drink for 75 cents. Oscar comes to town, he was from Richmond, and he starts selling them for 50 cents, And of course that stuff works, to do that. Okay, so anyway, then we have, looking along Main Street there, just before we get there though, the Yacht Club. Let me talk to you about the Yacht Club. The Yacht Club is on the corner of Escobar and Ferry. And that place was run by Mitch Costanza, and I'm going to tell stories about him, who later opened Mitch's on Pacheco Boulevard, and it became known as the Yacht Club. And then the McMahon family had it. And they had Chuck. Chuck ran that place for years and years. And they had the same clientele in there all the time. Same. These guys, and they were all working people. They worked as surveyors, they worked as engineers, they worked here and that. It was, and then there was Chuck behind the bar, and he'd wait all day. And those guys would start showing up at 4 o'clock. They'd leave maybe at 6:30 or 7. And there was Bobby, there was Boyne, there was Ray, there was Freitas, there was Ballesteri, there was Huffman, there was blah, blah, blah. I could remember them all. And they sat around the ring like this. And so one day I said to Chuck, Chuck, it's March. You still have the Christmas tree decorations up. And, they had all, and not just a little bit, the whole thing. And he looks at me and he goes, oh, yeah, what's the problem with that? He goes, those are the ones from last year. So they just load them up. They kept them up all the time. So it was a place that wanted to be timeless. But then when that ended and Martinez got a kind of a renewal, Mike Telfer and his wife, Judy, great people, they inherited the property through their father and told their father, we'll run the bar. Oh, really? Yeah. So they ran the bar with Chuck there and everything, but boy, oh boy, because they brought in live music and had bands playing and what have you. It was a lot of work, really. And they changed it into a restaurant. It was really good. God love them. They did a good thing and everything. There were places in Martinez that were bars that had live music and bands that came. Not the College Lane. College Lane was peaceful, secure. Lights were bright. You could go in there and listen to Frankie Lane. You could go in there and listen to Stardust. You could go in there and listen to Frank Sinatra and the music from the 40s and the 50s. Beautiful music, beautiful place, very calm. And women at the bar. You'll see a picture of that. And so on this place, I want to talk about the Yacht Club a little bit and then move on. Next to that was the B&B Pool Hall. B&B, classic, just a classic place. And they had in the center of the pool hall was a large snooker table, extra large. And it just sat there and they would clean it every day and had all these players. So on Saturday morning, if you got there around 10 and you stayed till 2 or 3, about 30 guys from in and out would play this game on there every day, and they would bet things and play snooker and over, and no fights, no problems, absolutely no alcohol, anything. I mean, there was alcohol, but no alcoholism. People got drunk. But the B&B was, that's where Mike Alford kept his office. Who remembers Mike? Anybody? Yeah, Mike kept his office there, and so he was a different character, to put it mildly, but that's what happened. So on that same street, though, just before it, around the corner, was the Venetian Club. That's where the Contra Costa County Historic Society is now, over there, and that was the Venetian Club. Dom Lupo and your cousin, right? Yeah, right, Grilli. George Grilli and Dom Lupo opened that place, more Italians. Okay, now, then you had Steve's Club next to on Ferry Street, next to the B&B Pool Hall. Steve was a Greek. He was from Greece, and he actually moved back to Greece after he did very well in business, and he would donate things to Martinez. He loved Martinez so much. He owned a hotel in Athens, and he'd get people to go home, go back to Athens and stay at his hotel. Probably some of you did. And then he would donate. So if you go around to some of these places and you see the brick down there, you'll see Steve Capajanis there. And he was a good man. He loved Martinez. He knew everybody, and he made some good money. He kept on his money. And then he went back there and did what he did. I'm sure he's all passed away. All these people are passed away, generally speaking. But anyway, and then let's go and talk a little bit about the Y Club. So way out on the other end of town, on Alhambra Avenue was a busy place where the Safeway is out there, but then it stopped right where the Y Club was. And the road took a Y. And you went to the left, and it went to the right. And you could go to Franklin Canyon to the right, and to the left, you'd go up to Nob Hill. And the reason why the road didn't go through is because that was the old Martinez land grant that John Muir's family, Dr. Strenzel, had gotten a hold of. Dr. Strenzel was John Muir's father-in-law. He's the one who made all the money, right? He was a very good businessman and one of the top agriculturists in the history of California. So he planted all kinds of fruits and vegetables, all kinds of things out there, and they were in rows out there, and it stayed that way for a long time. There's pictures in Martinez which are sort of from Mount Wanda or from the Muir house, and you look out over that valley, and the valley's just coming in. There's nothing but just beautiful agriculture. Martinez was the home of agriculture like you can't believe. And one of the things that it produced for us was the cannery. We had canneries here, and that produced a lot of work. 800 jobs could work in that cannery, mostly women. They used to work there. I used to see them. I went down there many times, and you go in there and they'd be wearing the plastic thing, with the tomatoes and stuff they're working, and they get the stuff all over. So they wear a plastic suit over them, the thing over their heads, the gnat over their head and everything. And then at the end, when the shift was over, they take a hose and wash one another down, the tomatoes to get them all, the peaches to get them all off of them. Yeah, the cannery was something. I'm going to try and read a little something from my book on that, but we better get going because anyway, the Y Club was a good place. They had music, they had food out there, and it was good. I enjoyed it. We talked some about Paul's place and where that was located, and we talked a little bit about Mitch's place and where that was located on Pacheco Boulevard. Mitch specialized in steaks and Italian food, and Mitch was a great bartender. And where his place was, directly across the street, you look out from the counter. Mitch was not far from the counter, the cash register. He'd look out the window there, and that was the Shell Gate. And they'd get in their trucks, they'd leave Shell, and some of them would shoot straight across Pacheco Boulevard, pull into Mitch's and cash their check. So Mitch would go to the bank and get $20,000. Right there. And don't try and rob him. Good luck. He'll pin you. All right. He was a big, strong man.
One time.
Angelo Costanza's here, the son of Mitch. Let's give him a round of applause. Yeah. When your father and mother passed away briefly, you ran the place. God bless you for that. Anyway, all right, so let's move on. So Mitch's Club was quite a place. And then we had Paul's place. I can't say enough about it. It was just a wonderful, wonderful place for food and for good times and memories. My wife and I, all of you have great memories. We're able to go there. It was really high class and so nice. Like one of the trucking families told me one time, if you go to Paul's, you wear a coat and tie. That's what's going on, coat and tie. It was really a nice place. And so now let's go pretty soon, I think. Let's go to the photos. What do you think? Okay, we're going to start off with Booze and Blessings. Mottos is not first. We're going to Chet Pasco. Sorry about that. Okay, so here is the Martinez Marina. And that where the red is, that's where Pasco's was at. See the water all around it? And he had boats. He had the whole thing lined up. And it was in the center of action. It was a great place. And I insisted that we include it in the bars because people would go there and have a beer. It was not like the College Lane and what have you. It was a multi-interest place, but it was really something. And there's a little boats, and there's another picture of it. Thank you so much. Yeah, we've got Eric helping. Oh, Santa Maria, look at this. This is Granger's Wharf. So we had two wharfs. We had the wharf at the marina that was owned by the city and controlled by the city. And then we had the wharf that was controlled by the fishermen and their families. And you can see the little houses there, around there. That's where they live, right down there, right on the water. They live there. And now there was one thing that many of the fishermen really liked about having their boats there. They didn't have to pay the city a dime. They didn't pay the city a dime. That meant something because the city liked a little bit every month from the fishermen. And sometimes they'd park their boats in the Martinez Marina out in the bay a little bit, and the city liked their share. So that was Granger's Wharf. Thank you so much. Let's move on to Amados. Okay, to Amados. This will be interesting. Okay. The first picture on Amados is, yeah, there's Amados. We've got it next to Dominic's and Angelo's. Thank you. This is fabulous, in my opinion. Let's look at it. So Amados Sport Club, sports, hunting, fishing, headquarters, fine food, cocktail lounge, all true, very good food, excellent. Merchants' lunches, they did a great lunch business, great lunch. Regular dinners, 5 p.m. to 6 p.m., owned and operated by the Amato family since 1933. Now, look at the size of that elk. No, seriously, look at the size of it. And I know for a fact, because I attended the event, Johnny Miller, who was the sheriff, who was always down in Amados, always. When he was the mayor, he was always down there. He'd get in the car with those guys, and he and Vince would drive off, and they'd decide who's going to be the vice mayor, you know? So anyway, there's Amados, and that Johnny went and got a couple big bull elks like that in Colorado with his posse, brought it back, and Amados cooked it with Johnny, probably other, remember the Marizzanis maybe, and they cooked that, and it was delicious. And my dad took me to the feed, which was in the back end of Amados, so they could sit 80, maybe even 90 people back in their place there, and they did. And so then they had the seafood and the steaks, and it was really, really special. Let's go to the next one, please. Vince. His daughter is here. Thank you for coming. Let's give her a round of applause. Yeah. Cha-cha. Okay, look at this. That's her father. And see all the heads? Because this was the hunting headquarters. They had them all over the walls, right? And so there you have Vince. And that's after Martinez won the crucial battle over who started the martini. Herb Cain was the leader of the pack that said the Martini started in San Francisco. So he came to Martinez to gather evidence and everything. And later there was a trial. Vince sat as a party in the trial. There were actually lawyers that participated in it. Bill Glass participated in it. And the judges from Martinez and the county participated in it. And we won. But Herb Cain came to Martinez, and he had lunch with my father and others, and my dad took him outside the restaurant because Herb Cain says, listen, this doesn't make sense. You showed me that there were wineries, or 28 wineries in Martinez. You showed me this. What about the olives? He walks him outside. My dad walks him over there. He said, look, what do you think those are? Yeah, they're olive trees. So the olive grove really crushed his opinion a little bit, but he hung on in that. And there's Vince Amato. Let's go to the next photo.
You gotta bring back those t-shirts.
Huh?
You gotta bring back those t-shirts.
Sure, yes. Now this is a classic photo. This is the DiMaggio Amato family and friends. Okay. Mrs. Amato was a DiMaggio. So she was Joe DiMaggio's first cousin. That's Mr. Ballesteri, Dominic. That's Foghorn putting his he was when I was a kid, he was called the original Joe DiMaggio. Because he used to come in the College Lane and we'd say, that's the original Joe DiMaggio. Because he was older than Joe by 6 months. Yeah. And then his hands on there, and I think that's a union leader. That's Dan Cedar in the Cedar, and that's Mr. Amato in the back, Pete. And then this is Marie Goodman here on the left. Her daughter here, Mary, is here. And then next to that is Mike DiMaggio, a double first cousin of Joe DiMaggio. 2 sisters married 2 brothers. So 2 Mercurio sisters that were very pretty married 2 DiMaggio brothers. And then, of course, Johnny Miller, the mayor, is right next to Joe. Can't get any closer, whispering in his ear. And then in the back there is Vince DiMaggio and Jack Amato. Vince Amato and Jack Amato. And actually, Foghorn is next to Vince. He's not the one over here. This is his brother. Okay, I got him mixed up. Now, the guy in the center was probably the greatest fisherman in the history of Martinez. And if you don't believe it, he'll believe it for you and tell you. But he was truly, truly great. He really was. And in a way, he was a heroic figure because when they closed the river, he kept fishing. This is a picture of Joe DiMaggio when he went out and caught a fish. Look at that sturgeon. That's Jack Amato and Vince, the brothers, who are his cousins, you know. And Joe loved Amatos. He loved Paul's too. He loved Paul's, but Joe loved Amatos. It was his family, you know. And so it's just good stuff here. Let me see if I can find what I was going to try and read about something here, just if you don't mind for a minute. Let me see here.
Put your glasses on.
Huh? Oh, yeah. I will. Okay, let me see here. Bear with me. Okay. No? Okay. This is about Chucky DiMaggio. And it comes from me talking to him one day. He who ran with the river, slooped with the tulies, and slept with the tides, has said a last goodbye. The river king, about whom generations should sing. Chucky was 6 the first time he pulled a big heavy net out in the channel. And when he was 66, he was still catching sturgeon in the eternal battle. So that's a little poem about when Chucky passed away, you know, and he was an amazing guy. And one more Amato story. Chucky got arrested because he refused to follow the law, which said no more gill net fishing in the river. And he kept doing it. And he would go to Amato's and brag about it. And Amato's was the kind of place that had the game wardens sitting at the bar talking. And Chucky would talk about it. And then somebody would say, Chucky, these guys, they can't get me. And then he'd go out at 3 a.m. and fish. Well, anyway, he got prosecuted and he got convicted and he got put in jail, but he got to become a trustee, right? So if anybody remembers Martinez, the old jail, you'd walk by and they would be washing cars, the trustees, you know? So he'd be a suit outside, no chains on, nothing. He was a trustee, right? And guess what? The Amatos would bring him food. They'd run food over because he complained, oh, this stuff is the worst food ever. They bring him over some fish or, you know, whatever. You get the point, right? And so, yeah, great stories. So let's go on to the next one. This is the Mitch's Yacht Club. Oh, yeah. Angelo's father. Okay. This was the yacht club when that man right there ran the place. That's Angelo's father. Wonderful, wonderful man. Great high school football player at Alhambra. Terrific guy. And a legendary figure in Martinez. He had Mitch's Club. Now, one of the things that he did, let's go on to the sports picture. This is the team he sponsored. That's Mitch right here in the lower front with the thing. That's next to him is Mel Caroni, and next to that is Sam Belleci and Jimmy Lavello standing, and then the one and only Nino Belleci, who was a great catcher on the team, and that's Joe DiMaggio's cousin next to him, who was and then next to that is Costanza, Horace Costanza, and then Joe Belleci, and then Angelo, the Mercurio. That was the Mercurios, and then behind that is Arango, I believe, and then John Belleci, and then Bob Catelli. Frank Angelo is the last one over there, and then Ike Lucido, and another, I believe that's another Rango. Yes.
All Italian except 2 guys.
Everybody's Italian except for 2 guys, yeah. But they were great players. Joe Belleci was a great, he's still alive. He was a great athlete. So was Johnny Belleci. All of them so what Mitch did was, this was his way of publicizing because everybody followed the games. When the newspaper came out, you read it and they reported on the games. This is city softball. It was reporting the game. Who's playing third base? How many hits he got? What's his batting average? All of that. So it was very intense. Very intense. So the bars got in on it. Many of the bars had sports teams, and this is what they did. And this is the story of it. So let's move on to the next one.
Hey, tell me one thing. When they went over and beat Concord.
Yeah, we'll talk about that one.
Well, the bottom line is those guys turned all the lights off and left the trophy there.
Yeah.
And I still got the trophy in my garage. they left. No
Yeah. Okay. The Aloha Club. Now, the Aloha Club is where, just a few doors down from the Matador and the College Lane. And this is after World War II. This is, hey guys, You went to the tropics. You went to Hawaii. Try our place. This was owned by Mr. Green. Mr. Green was a very good businessman. He was an African-American businessman who just did very well. And he owned other properties and he had other businesses. He was in the moving business. He was also a property owner, leasing property and renting property. And the Aloha Club was his dream. And he had it right on Ferry Street. And it kind of had the little sarongs there. I entered very briefly with my dad one time when I was underage. There's the Aloha Club with drinks from the romantic tropics. So you get that tropic experience going again, right? You get your drinks. Old-fashioned hospitality, old-fashioned. So the seamen, hold it 1 second. Martinez became a place with a lot of seamen coming at night to the College Lane or this place or other places or Mottos. They were just there, a lot of them, and they became familiar. You know, people go to bars for familiarity, for friendship, for solidarity, for companionship, to know people. And so it serves a purpose. May not be the liking for many of us who think that there's too much drinking, too many alcohol, too much beers, but the reality is it serves a purpose. And so this was serving a purpose of people. Now, Mrs. Green was Hawaiian. I believe she was Hawaiian. I knew who she was. They were from the same neighborhood as where I was from. She was Hawaiian and very nice people. And there's still some around in descendants here. Let's go on. The Matador. This is my brother-in-law's place. My brother-in-law and my sister got married when they were young, and they had 7 kids. And Butch was running a bar, but 26 years old. That's where it was located, not far from the College Lane. That's Butch, most handsome guy around. Look at him. And he was a character. Nothing he couldn't do, right? Anyway, so 7 kids. There he's. This is before he got the kids going and then took them, you know, he had to go to work. He was running a bar and having all these kids. And he had a wonderful big Cadillac, 2 doors with 7 kids. There's Butch. And this is my sister, who was his cocktail waitress on Friday and Saturday night. They stayed married 57 years. And the Ballesteros said that it never lasts, and it lasted 57 years. So she's still alive, and my sister Lorraine is going up to see her today to visit her in Reading. Class of 55. Wow. College Lane. Ooh, what a place. I loved the college. I didn't like it. I loved it. It was a great place. A lot of learning there, a lot of nice, interesting people, and it was safe and easy going. This is probably right after the war, but that's the atmosphere there. You can see the place, and it was a fabulous place. I mean, the years that I saw it, it was not crowded like that, but this is after the war, and the sailors and scene like that. It was a peaceful, nice place. And in the back of that building was where the morning crowd would go. The 6 a.m. guys, you know, they'd show up and get their coffee and have a shot or two in there. I'm playing Stardust on this because that Stardust, in my opinion, was the theme song. There's Frankie on the right, and Ernie. Look at all the ladies at the bar. This is 50s. And there's Ernie with them. They were partners. Eddie DeBette is here. God bless you and your father. Thank you. Along with his wife, Diane. So there you have Hoffman's Corner. Sal's Taxi, the College Lane, Colombo's Casino. That was before the Matador. After. That was Angelo's. Angelo Colombo. Yeah, there's the old College Lane. So it's Whiskey Lane now. Yeah. Okay. Paul's Place.
White Club.
Oh, Y Club, sorry. Yeah, Y Club. Now we're going to get a picture of the Y Club. It's out on Alhambra Avenue. So this is the Y. See the dancing they had there? And that, you know, my uncle used to go there a lot. He loved the barbecue dinners, and off and off efforts were made to popularize it. It was a place people went to, and he had music and dancing and drinking and steaks. You know, and so it was well located until they pushed the whole river through, or the whole road, and it never had much parking. Parking was always a hassle there. Could never do as good. And then later, the school district took all the parking because people used to park on the school district property where Montecito's high school was, or grade school. and then there. And so this is right across from where the Safeway is. The Safeway, okay. And there's Paul's place. Let's see Paul. There's Paul's place.
Wow.
Paul's was the fine Italian restaurant housed in 1877 at James Kelly Mansion on Alhambra Avenue. It opened in 1920. Paul Paganini as a luxurious place to dine. It would operate for more than 50 years until burning to the ground in 1981. One of the most sad days in the history of Martinez is when Paul's place burned. It was unbelievable, just unbelievable. And so sad. So we're the Martini. Okay. Now, this epitomizes the Martini and where it would have been first started. And the bar, and this would be in the old Alhambra Hotel. And there was a bar there. That hotel is no longer there. Became a drugstore later, and there was a fire actually, which caused the demise of that. Now here we have our police, and there they are. Now this is Charlie, who was the marshal, the town marshal, and I'm trying to remember his name. He'd go to people's house and talk to them about cases and problems and try to eat their lunch. He was a character. Now there they are. I want to go back to the other picture though, because actually my father's in it. See the guy in the hat? That's my dad, and he's talking to him. Now, why would the city manager, chamber director be meeting with the police? He was just involved in everything. Because in those days, there was no Main Street Martinez that did a lot of great to build up Martinez. There was the Chamber of Commerce, there were not these other organizations, and you did everything. When there was a parade, he ran it. When there was fireworks down at the marina, he ran it. All this kind of stuff, and I grew up with it, and if you were not in the chamber, we didn't go in your place. We didn't shop there, we didn't buy it. It was that way. And then here, that's Roy Nicola, the third one. The first one is Steve Nielsen. Roy Nicola fished me out of the creek one night, and I did nothing wrong other than I just ran out of air. Do you remember that one, Angelo? Yeah. And then he took me to my dad's house. He wanted to deliver me or something like, here's your son, Claude, so anyway. But there's Martinez's finest. There you are. Good police. We had good police too. They got to know everybody. Great stories. Well, this has been really fun, and I really enjoy it. I want to maybe turn and read you something else, if you don't mind. And you can tell me if you get sick of all of this, but just a couple more, and then we can call it. I'm going to read this one here. I always liked this one when I wrote it.
You need more light now?
Yeah, it would be nice a little more. Yeah. The College Lane was a classic. It was about the 40s, a World War II bar. Sitting on stools were guys named Guadalcanal Bill and Iwo Jima Sid. The place was run by Frankie and Ernie. Frankie stayed sober and Ernie seldom did. Frankie was the master of all things having to do with making people comfortable in a bar. His first focus was security and safety. His second was music. Lots of Frankie Lane, the Mills Brothers, Glenn Miller, and Harry James playing Stardust. I always felt that was the theme song of the College Lane until I heard K-Star's Wheel of Fortune one morning, and I knew then that it had two theme songs, the College Lane. Quite a place. And the B&B pool parlor was a place out of a novel. The bar, its tables and furnitures were furnishing the centerpiece, which was a large old snooker table. The snooker table was the only well-made thing in the B&B. Its green felt was manicured and cleaned daily. Its pockets of leather strengthened and tightened. Then the men would show up and wager and lose money. The B&B pool hall. So now there's so many of these things in Martinez. If you don't mind, I'll give you just a couple of things. Okay, we had at Granger's Wharf a great cannery. And let's see if I've got that one here. It's just a little bit here. Okay, what time is it?
You got plenty of time.
Okay, the North End. This is called the North End because Mr. Martinez, Don Ignacio, was a Don, and he had connections to the governor of Mexico in 1830, 1840, because he became the alcalde of San Francisco and a general in the Mexican army. So Mr. Martinez was a big deal. And when Mexico succeeded from Spain, there was a breakup, and these governors were in charge of doling out the money, or doling out the property, really what it was. So Don Ignacio put in a bid, and he got 18,000 acres. And the 18,000 acres runs from the Alhambra Creek all the way over to Pinole to their creek. And it is on the north, or in the north side, it's bordered by the river. So he had all that property going out as far to Baroni's. Baroni's was another land grant. And on the other side was the Los Angeles family as a land grant, on the other side of our creek. So really our town was two towns in a way, but it was united by a bridge they put over the creek. At any rate, in the north end was always a special end. That's where I grew up, basically, and Angelo grew up, and we always loved it. And down where the creek was, you saw Granger's Wharf. The Sicilians started coming in the 1880s, 1890s. And then this is a little bit of a talk about, a little writing I did about the north end, and now we're going to talk about the cannery. The trucks came from all over, Stockton, Modesto, Manteca. They'd enter the gate, pass over that little rinky-dinky bridge, and go on to the scales to be weighed. Tomatoes from heaven, crates of them, boxes of them, millions and millions of them. Then the forklift driver would start unloading until down into the big vats, the tomatoes would roll. A huge tomato sauce was being made. You could smell it all over Martinez. It was the canneries doing. They had a contract to make pizza with a crazy guy from New York. He wanted fresh, sweet tomatoes from California cooked with oregano. Martinez got the wafer. Then the cans would start to roll, 5 gallons apiece. Then the little ones too. The noise would bounce off the walls and send a sound outside long into the night air. You couldn't even hear yourself talk inside. It was that loud. Then Tino would pull the whistle and the whole thing would end up and you getting tingling up your spine. The cannery was at work. People were making money. Women were happy. Kids were making money. Women were happy. Kids were smiling, and the whole north end smelled like a pizza. Thank you very much. Oh, I want to tell.
I want you to just quickly mention something about the Hub Club.
Oh, absolutely. When I grew up, I knew about Jimmy Mulcahy. Everybody knew about him. He was a wonderful, colorful character. He played sports, played in the league. So when I was 7 or 8 years old, he was an outstanding catcher. And then when I got old enough to go to the bars, there he was. You know, he was a bartender, what have you. And in the course of his career in the bar business, he opened a place called the Hub Club. And that was really something. It's full of action. We had an African-American piano player in Martinez named Jimmy Sims. Oh man, could that guy play. Yeah, he never took lessons in anything, and he could play anything just by his ear, listening to it. And he played for Jimmy and Jimmy's place. And we went in there one time when I was about 17 years old or 16 years old and listened to Jimmy. And we were from the neighborhood. He's, come on, you guys. And it was really something. And Mulcahy was there. Then I got to be good friends with Jimmy. And we traveled together. We went to Ireland together. He was a big Irishman. And we went down to Mexico again. We went to Husson's is where we went. And Jimmy was the one that introduced me to the college line. He cooked me. He walked me in there at 6 a.m. one morning, and this when I was about 25. And he goes, I'm going to introduce you to the real Martinez, you know, these working people that are drinking on the job and what have you. So I'm going to tell you one more story. This is Booze and Blessings.
Hey, Tom, one quick.
Yeah.
Just wanted to let everyone know that we have 30 people attending via Zoom.
Okay.
And one person is asking how can they get a hold of your book? Is your book available?
No, it's not. It's down to like 2 copies, you know.
Okay.
I'm going to tell you a story that kind of ties it in together and brings it back to Martinez a little bit. One night it was a Saturday night, and been drinking too much. I was a single man. I wasn't married, and just got out of hand that night. Anyway, we were in the Matador, and then problems erupted in the Matador because the Matador, which was run by my brother-in-law, had a pool table. You know, guys drinking at pool tables. Anyway, the fight broke out, and it got ugly. And the guy that was on the side that money was claimed that he owed for the losing the pool game went and got a weapon. And he came back about 5 minutes later with a weapon which was about that long. It was a sword. And he stuck a great friend of mine who had gone to high school with me, played high school football. And it was Pete Peters, his name. His father ran the bank on the corner where the Union Bank was, and now the credit union's at. So anyway, the whole thing went crazy, you know? And all of a sudden you have this guy dying on the sidewalk in front of the Matador on Ferry Street, and it's 6 o'clock at night or something, whatever. And there's just an emergency, and the only people attending to him were the Ballesteri twins, Anthony and Donnie. I mean, come on, you know? So nobody knew what to do. And then the word came that this tragedy to the College Lane and sitting in the College Lane. And this kind of sums up the kind of place the College Lane was. Had a big crowd in there for Saturday night. Ernie's kissing everybody. And Dr. Coates is there, along with Dr. Fadden, who's a dentist. Dr. Coates was in World War II, and he was a medic, and he was a licensed doctor in Martinez. He heard about what's going on. He got up off his stool, went outside, saw this guy laying there, and Pete's there on his back like this, and blood is coming out of his chest, out of his heart. He looks at the situation. They call 911 for something. He leans down, and he puts his finger in the hole and stopped it right there. And then he gave the order. He said, get the phone gun. And then the guy came, and he told him, this is what happened. Look, I can show you. So then they got him. They called him in the car. So then finally, my brother-in-law was at the house with the 7 kids. He comes down in emergency. Robert Green's around the corner, and the whole thing. And all of a sudden, it's so serious, just shocking to me and to everyone. So we get in Butch's Cadillac, and I'm in the back seat. Robert Green's in the passenger seat, and Butch is driving. So we take off, and we're going to the hospital. The ambulance is driving him there. Okay, he's at the hospital. And I said to him, we got to stop at St. Catherine's. I've got to pray. We just got to pray. So the 4:30 Mass or 5 o'clock Mass was over, and the place was open. And the doors were wide open. Monsignor Deans was there. So I just went in right there. We went up to the church and to the altar there, and we asked for a blessing. We asked for prayers. Not too much booze. We needed blessing. And so I just begged for Pete's life. And then we all got back in the car and we went up to the hospital. In those days, the big hospital there is now was not there. There was like a single level hospital, as I recall. And he was in the emergency room. This nurse came out and she's got blood and, things like that. And we said, is he okay? And she, it's ugly. It's close. So anyway, about an hour later, we were waiting. This doctor comes out. They had flown him in on a helicopter from Oakland. He was an expert physician on hearts. And he came in and he said to us, he pulled his things off and he goes, he's gonna live. I mean, that is my Martinez, booze and blessings for you as my gift for you. I don't think I've ever told that story in public before. Angelo Costanza, lawyer deluxe, what do you want to say?
That particular evening, I was out of town wherever, and I come back into town at Winks. They said about your friend, our friend.
Yeah.
So I immediately drove to the place. I went right in his room. He was all hooked up and everything. I prayed for him.
Oh, Angelo, God bless you. Let's give Angelo Costanza a round of applause. Okay. Oh, I tell you, this has been a delight, really. Thank you for being so easygoing.
You want to take some questions?
Yes, questions for sure. Dave Hanna, you wanted to ask one. Okay. Yes, sir. I have no idea. Go ahead.
I think, if I remember right, the gentleman who owned it before my dad was named Sabine Borgay, and I think he was putting his son through college, and that was how he was raising money.
Yeah. Yeah. Other questions? Other questions? Yes.
If we can't get your book anymore, can we get copies of the video presentation?
Oh, sure. Yeah, that's fine. I mean, this one?
Someone found it online at Amazon.
Oh, no!
Hey, all right.
Is that it?
Your book!
I didn't know that. Well, that's a, yeah. I've written books about Martinez, but I have not published, actually, gone home. Yes, ma'am.
This place called, what's it called? Something Hollow. It's a building. Toad Hollow? Do you know where that is? Yeah, it's down there. I was wondering if anybody knows what that originally was, because it looks quite old.
I'm not in a position to answer that question. My mind gets foggy when I get on Pacheco Boulevard, No, I'm an Alhambra Avenue guy. Those two roads come down, they end up in the bay,
Well, it's just before the King of Clubs, the bar.
The what bar? The King of Clubs.
Yeah, the King of Clubs out there.
Yeah, you're right, yeah.
It's right on the corner.
Yeah.
Toad Hollow.
Yeah, and there was a bar out there near where, before Mitch's Club and after Shorty's, and there was, Trails Inn was the name of it. Yeah, Trails Inn. We probably overlooked a couple of places. I'm not really sure. Toots 500 Club, which Dr. Rampoli's brother was on the corner of Alhambra and Maine. I never went in there, but that was an interesting name for it. And so, what other questions? Yes.
I live close to the monument on Chapin Boulevard where Dr. Marsh was murdered.
Yes.
Do you know, and I've been looking for more information, do you know anything about Dr. John Marsh was murdered? He was a big pioneer of Martinez.
Yeah, he was. You know, he came out. He was a Harvard-educated doctor, as I recall, and he came to California. Really, what happens? And instead of settling in the Central Valley, he settled in this valley out here, which was so fertile. And he wrote a lot of letters back to Life magazine, that type of stuff, back east to tell people, hey, this is really great out here. We need to come out here in more droves and stuff like that. And so he encouraged people to come out here and develop the culture and stuff like that. Yeah, he got here, I think, in the 1830s. So in the 1830s, he was here in 1840, I'm pretty sure. And Sutter got here around the same time, maybe 1840. And Sutter's a good little story about how he tries to go up to Sacramento. He has this plan to go to Sacramento. He gets a visa in Hawaii. So he had to come to Mexico, which was California. So he had to get a visa, right? So he goes through Portland, Oregon, goes to Hawaii, gets his visa, comes, and he goes with a big ship, goes up the river. And who does he pass by? Martinez. And he fires a gun, right? He had guns on those. And then he has to get up to Sacramento. He wants to go there. Okay, so how does he get there? It took him 7 trips to get up there because that is the power of the Delta and all the rivers with no dams at that time. It was nearly impossible. And he hired good guides to get him there, and it couldn't work. It was just too much. And so it just shows us the power. And that is why Martinez becomes so important because, hey, how do I get to Sacramento? How do I get to Sutter's place? How do I do this? And the guy looks at it and goes, well, if you're trying to go up the river, it's really, really hard. The guides are very expensive. They don't always work. They quit the job. They go to the gold fields, whatever. I think the best way to do it is you go a ferry to Oakland, you go over the hills, you go to a place called Martinez, and there's a ferry there, and it's just a mile across. And once you're on the other side, it's smooth sailing all the way to Sacramento. And isn't that the truth? It's not part of the Delta. It's not really part of the Delta. The Delta is out where Rio Vista is. That's where it kind of starts for those people. And of course, for us, we're part of the Delta in some ways. So that's an interesting story about why Martinez became so developed. Now, there is another person of interest here because this building is named after a member of his family. Kenneth Joseph McNamara is here. Let's give him a round of applause. Yeah. Ken still lives in the family home on Main Street, 218 Main Street. Spent a lot of time in Ken's house. Ken, what is the name of the McNamara member Henry McNamara, isn't it? This building's named after him? Henry Ambrose McNamara. It's right on the plaque. Was this building made after World War II, after World War I? Right. Yeah. Did your family contribute?
I imagine. There were 7 uncles up there on Willow Street.
Yeah. Yeah, Kenny was from the McNamara family who did quite well. One of the McNamaras came and used his Irish charm to become the mayor, built buildings, built the State Theater and other things like that. They helped our community. And of course, Dave Hanna went to high school with me. He's John Muir's great-grandson. Yeah. I've been pulling that on him for years. We went to Alhambra High together. He could do a flip, just stand on it and do a flip, land on his feet. Yeah. I drive him crazy. Okay. Other questions? Yes.
What about the Tucker House up on Escobar?
The Tucker House. Oh, you mean the one on the corner of Escobar and Talbert?
Just below Tim's house, Farley.
Yeah, yeah. Well, family, there were houses, huh?
That's Dotay's house.
Oh, you mean Dotay's house? Yeah, Ken Dotay owned that. And yeah, that was right next to Nick Pegney, right across the street from my parents' house. And it was a fancy, nice house. When I was a kid, though, there were a lot of the cab drivers lived there. So they were renting, a couple of cab drivers there and that sort of stuff, Anyway.
By the way, you mentioned John Muir's property. Just so you know, he had 4 square miles, 2,600 acres.
I don't know about that, but I'm not going to doubt it. Well, 2,600, yes, because Martinez got 18,000.
Yeah.
So more than he could ever use. So part of what the Martinez family did was to sell off the land, especially when they had a little interesting side on the Martinez family is a son-in-law of Don Ignacio. The plaza is named for Don Ignacio Martinez. Okay. So one of his son-in-laws, Smith was his name. He's the guy that started the city engineering wise, that got it going, drawing up the streets and everything. And Mr. Martinez wanted it named after his family and parts of it too. So Estadio Street was Mr. Martinez's son-in-law. Castro Street was Mr. Martinez's son-in-law. Okay. Barralesa was Mr. Martinez's son-in-law. Henrietta was his daughter.
What about Escobar?
Escobar was part of that too. Yeah, but I don't know what is Richardson. You know Richardson Bay? It's the same Richardson as our Richardson Street. Richardson Bay was named after a son-in-law of Don Ignacio. So in Martinez, what's the name? Susanna was Mr. Martinez. So Susanna Street Park, and what have you. And she donated the land where the Catholic Church is to the Catholic Church. Where the city is, she donated the land for the city to have, where the city hall is now, for the boys club to have, for schools and stuff like that. Okay, so then that happened, and then years and years go by. One of the early things I remember from the 50s, what my dad was involved in, is what are we going to do about modernizing Martinez? We need a new city hall. We had the most fabulous city hall ever, right on Main Street. You know, it was just out. They had the fire department in there. They had everybody in there. And the great thing about it was so small, you could listen to the meetings that the city council were having in secret. You know, you could hear it all. Yeah, you could just eavesdrop on it totally. So they couldn't get away with any shenanigans, right? So, and the fire department was there and all this kind of stuff. So they decided to go and build a modern complex on the land where people have been playing baseball and basketball on the land there, were right next to the Boys Club, between that and City Hall. And they had all the plan all drawn up. This is 1957 or so. And then someone from the Martinez family comes up and says, hold it. On that donation made by Susanna, she said that land for the city hall had to be named as a plaza for her father, or we get the land back. Oh my God, where in the hell is this lawyer from, right? You know, so that's why they backed off, and it's named Don Ignacio Plaza. That's a true story. Anyway, any other questions?
You know that used to be an elementary school.
Yes. That's where the city hall is, yeah. And the other one, the boys club, was an elementary school. Yeah, yeah. The land is owned by the city. Yeah, that was donated to them by Susanna. Anyway, Susanna was married to Mr. Smith, the man that developed the town. Yes.
That park situation happened in Concord too, Toto Santos.
Yeah.
And the Pacheco family.
Yeah, yeah. Toto Santos was the original name of the town.
Build anything on it.
Yeah, yeah. That's right. And all of them, and of course, great times to come. I hope I can come back and talk to you about 150 years at St. Catherine's, which is a great story. Yeah, thank you. All right.